Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fast to Heal Stories. We are on episode 150. I am so excited about this. This is 3 years that we've been putting out podcast episodes for Fast to Heal Stories. If you would have told me back in September of 2020, when I started the podcast, that I would have been rolling out 150 episodes and still going 3 years later, I don't know that I would have believed you. I was hopeful of such a thing, but it has really just zipped by. I can't believe we're on 150 episodes. So thank you for joining me. Today's hot topic is a good one. I think so many people get confused about the topic of autophagy. And we've mentioned it several times here in the podcast, but I've not devoted an entire episode to this topic. And I think people just kind of misthink a lot of things, if that's even a word, misthink. I'm not sure. Anyway, we just have some misunderstandings. That's a better way to put it, Shanna. Misunderstandings about autophagy. We kind of think of it as this on-off switch. I'm in autophagy, I'm out of autophagy. And as we'll see, that's not completely accurate. It's more like a dimmer switch where we just have, varying levels of autophagy going on in the body. And another interesting thing is people just think of autophagy as this like process that's happening. It's like an all or nothing, like I'm turning autophagy on, I'm turning autophagy off. But we actually have autophagy, a lot of different types of autophagy going on in the body and different types of autophagy going on in each of our organs and organ systems. So that is super interesting. I think there's a lot to be, uncovered and unraveled about the topic of autophagy. And it's really kind of it's not a new thing. Obviously, it's been going on in the human body since we've existed. But it's a newly discovered process in the human body that's gaining more and more attention. And, and rightly so. I mean, it's a very, very sought after healing benefit of the body that can do amazing, amazing things when we let it. So autophagy basically means self-eating. So that is kind of what the body is doing in the process of autophagy. I mean, that's to put it in simplest terms. So self-eating, recycling, getting rid of cells, viruses, proteins, parts of cells, parts of proteins, amino acids, bacteria, even cancer cells that we no longer need. So we're going to talk about, how we get into the process of autophagy, because I get a lot of questions about, okay, at what hour of fasting? Because most people know that fasting is one of the most potent, that's the word I'm looking for, the most potent strategies to get into autophagy, if not the most potent strategy, whereas exercise would be the other thing that really helps us get into autophagy. So people will often ask me, okay, well, what hour fasting do I get into autophagy? And it's just not that simple. There's a lot of variables and a lot of, just depending on the person, where you're at, what you've eaten. If you have been an intermittent faster or done longer fasts a long time, you're going to be somebody who gets into autophagy more quickly than somebody who has never been in much of a fasted state. They're eating from the time they get up till the time they go to bed. They're not in ketosis ever. They're sugar burners. That's gonna have a different effect on the process of autophagy than somebody who, is practicing a ketogenic diet and has some, hard hit workouts and is an intermittent faster from day to day and throw some longer fasts in there. Like, your body's better at the process of autophagy. So it's not like we can say, at hour 18, the autophagy switch is just turned on. It just doesn't work that way. And so for some people, the autophagy might start to really rev up at hour 16 some of the time. And then for that same person, depending on the day, depending what they're doing, and like I said, what their diet has been, what their exercise intensity has been, it might be more like hour 20 before they're really seeing good levels of autophagy. So let's break this down, kind of unpack what are the benefits of autophagy? Why do we even care about it? How it works, because I think that's really important. And like I said, it's not just like it's a one process that happens in the body. There's different organ systems that have their own kind of level of autophagy. So the benefits, number one, and one of the biggest reasons that I do it, and I like to do longer fasts here and there, is for anti-aging. I mean, you're clearing out old dead cells that aren't working well anymore and that need to be replaced. So the anti-aging benefit is wonderful. It also helps with detoxification. It helps the immune system immensely. And so many of you know that my mom right now is struggling or fighting stage 4 pancreatic cancer that has metastasized to her back and her liver. And I have recommended to her fasting protocols prior to and after her chemo treatments, because they will downregulate your healthy cells. So that's another thing that happens in the fasting process. But when you're in a fasted state, then the body can go and clean out cells that are abnormal and that would likely progress into cancer, but it's getting rid of them in the process of autophagy before they can turn cancerous. So helps the immune system immensely. The immune system really gets a boost when it doesn't have to digest food all the time and make enzymes to digest food. It just gets a break. So if it's not, digesting food is priority number one when you eat, like the food can't just sit in your stomach and, do nothing. It's not like your body can say, oh, I'm busy. Sorry. I'll come back and digest this food in 3 hours. Like, no, it hits stomach and it's got to be digested then and broken down. And so that takes away a lot of energy from the immune system, especially when you're sick. So the autophagy process helps to boost immunity. It helps with tissue quality. So just like, again, going back to those anti-aging properties, I mean, it helps skin elasticity. It helps your skin just to look fresher and brighter. And just tissue quality in general, not even just outwardly, but inwardly too, like the tissue quality of our organs. Like we want our organs to be healthy and our skin to be healthy. And that can be better accomplished when we let our body go into autophagy, at least, some of the time. It also helps to lower insulin, obviously. So we know that fasting is the most potent strategy to reverse insulin resistance. And this is because we're lowering our levels of insulin. So when we're in autophagy, insulin levels are lower, so we don't have to worry about, storing energy and locking away fat stores. We can rely on our other energies in the process of autophagy while our body does this kind of cleanup and recycling process. It also increases, when you're on autophagy, growth hormone increases, and that's a good thing. We want higher levels of growth hormone when we're in a fasted state, because this is going to help preserve our muscle mass. So we are perfectly created by God, and he made our growth hormones increase when we're in a truly fasted state. I'm not talking about calorie deprivation where we're just eating a few calories throughout the day and not eating enough, but when we're in a fasted state, our growth hormone will increase, and that will help to preserve our lean tissue. It also helps with brain recovery, and a lot of times people don't realize this. So when we're in the process of autophagy, if you have any sort of a brain injury, or those struggling with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, a lot of these folks will benefit from longer fasts and being in autophagy, because then we're utilizing ketones for energy. And ketones can cross the blood-brain blood-brain barrier and serve as an energy source for our brain. Kind of gets the glucose out of the way. Your body is fueling off ketones, and you're still in the process of autophagy. I'm not saying that autophagy, once you have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, can completely reverse this disease process, but it certainly can be beneficial. And it can be beneficial in preventing Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, just because we're relying on the ketones for energy rather than glucose. So we know that growth is good sometimes, right? Like when we're babies and children, we should be growing. But as adults, the process of growth isn't always good. Like we don't want growing cells. We don't want growing fat cells, right? Like that makes us obese. And when we're putting too much energy in and not burning it off, or if we're eating too often and our insulin levels are high, that type of growth isn't always good. Yes, we want to grow and repair what is broken down and what is old and used, but we really need to have a really nice balancing act between growth and breaking things down. So cleanup is really important in the human body, and that's where autophagy comes in. So a lot of times, like I said, fasting and higher intensity workouts are the two things that really help you to get into the process of autophagy, fasting being really, really the main driver there. But cleanup is super important. And most people, everyday Americans, they are in a fed state more than a fasted state. So they're never allowing their body to go into this process. And like I said, even those who are calorically restricted and maybe on a diet per se, and only eating 1,000 to 1,200 calories, they think, well, gosh, I have to be in autophagy. I'm hardly eating anything. But autophagy doesn't really rev up unless you're in a fasted state, not a low calorie state. It's a fasted state. So it's different. So the cleanup is really important. And a lot of times people just aren't allowing for this to happen in the human body. And it's a natural process. And we've talked about this so many times on the podcast before. Humans are not set up to eat all day, every day, from the time they get up until the time they go to bed. That is a very present day phenomenon. Like humans from even 70 years ago didn't do that. They ate 3 meals a day and stopped eating after dinner. They weren't snacking until they went to bed. They weren't up until midnight drinking soda and eating popcorn and getting up at 6 or 7 and eating again. Like they at least had some balance with this process. And then our ancestors from long time ago, our hunter-gathering ancestors, they might have gone a day or several days without eating, and that was fine. Like their body just turned to fat for fuel, and they were in a fasted state, and it was actually helpful for them because then their body was just working on recycling all the old junk that they didn't need anymore. Not only junk that they didn't need anymore, but just junk, like taking parts of cells that are still okay to use. So let's break that down a little bit. So when we are in a fed state, like on a typical day when we are eating, like I tell my students to eat around 100 grams of protein daily. And that's pretty, if we looked at it, it's probably somewhat average when we look at typical intake for men and women. A lot of women undereat protein, but say we have a need of about 100 grams of protein daily to sustain all of the tissue building, hormone building, neurotransmitter building, everything we need. And so when we eat 100 grams of protein daily, it goes into this amino acid pool. Like those proteins are broken down into amino acids. It's not like you eat protein and it's all the same. This is where, like I've talked about, animal protein being superior to plant proteins because it's got all of the essential amino acids in the meat. So if you eat eggs or if you eat animal flesh or fish, that has all the amino acids that you need, whereas plant proteins will just have some of the amino acids that you need, will not have all of them. I think quinoa is the only plant protein that may have all of the amino acids. But they basically get broken down and put into this pool. And this pool of amino acids is just kind of in your body, and your body will call upon the amino acids to do what it needs. Like, hey, I need you to build some sex hormones. Let's do that. Oh, you have an injury. I need you to, start the scarring process or start building some new tissue for this injury. Or, oh, the skin's been sloughing off, or, I need to rebuild the wall of the digestive tract. Whatever it is that the protein's called upon, your body will call upon the protein to do that. And so we use about 300 grams of protein daily. So you might be thinking, well, what the heck? How can I get by with eating 100 grams of protein if my body's using 300 grams of protein? And that's where this really cool recycling process goes on in the body. And I remember, I don't remember really learning about this in undergrad, like this wonderful, amazing recycling process of amino acids. It was something that I learned about when I was studying the process of autophagy. And so this recycling process goes on. So we eat about 100 grams of protein, and then we have to recycle, we recycle the rest. So the other 200 grams of proteins is recycled. So your body's just taking kind of bits and pieces of amino acids from all over the place and reusing it. So this reusing is so efficient. So we don't have to eat as much. We, to eat 300 grams of protein a day would be really tough, especially for women. You'd basically be eating only protein all day long and you'd be so full. And some people can get 300 grams of protein in, like maybe big men, but it's really tough to get that amount in. So our body has this really cool process of recycling. So if you're eating, you're putting about 100 grams of amino acids into that pool, and then you're recycling about 200. So what happens with the fasted state? It's like, okay, well, if I'm fasting, then where does all of this protein come from if I'm not taking anything in? So say you go a day without eating, you do a 24-hour fast, or you do a 36-hour fast, like you go overnight, you don't eat. There's no protein coming in, right? So now we have to make up that 300 grams of protein. We're still using it. We're still doing all of those things in the body. It's not like you stop eating and your body's like, okay, I'm not going to make any, I'm not going to repair any of these cells or make any more hormones until this person eats again. No, it keeps going. Those processes never quit. And of course, when you're in autophagy, your body will downregulate other things that aren't as important. But this recycling process is important. Like your body needs to keep making a lot of the things on a daily basis, like cells, red blood cells. I forget how many red blood cells your body makes a day, but it's a crazy amount. And so you're not taking any fuel in. So your body has to come up with this 300 grams of 300 grams of protein and get those amino acids back into the pool. So this is what the process of autophagy is your body basically goes on a search and searches out all the amino acids that are available and work and they still can be utilized for processes in the body. So it's like on a hunt, like it's just like all of these, it's just scavenging anything that it can and putting it back into the recycling system. What's cool about this process is that it's kind of like a deep cleaning, where it's like, we all know, like when our house is surface cleaned, when you just kind of put stuff away and it looks somewhat clean and you're like, oh yeah, that's good. But the deep cleaning, like when you can really get into the nitty gritty and deep clean even one room of your house, you're like, oh, I just want to stay in here all day. It's so clean. Like you dusted, you scoured everything. Maybe you even like dusted the billboards of your, the room that you're in. There's dusting going on. You've vacuumed your ceilings, there's no cobwebs. Like that's kind of what like that deeper state of autophagy is. Like your body's just cleaning everything. And so those old viruses that have been problematic, the bacteria that might have been hiding, cancer cells that are lurking, like your body's just like, you're going, like I can't use you. I'm only taking back to my amino acid pool the really good structures of protein and amino acids that I can use. I don't want this crap anymore that's old and, kind of drags my body down. So it's super amazing. So it gets rid of all the old crud. And this is where you hear of people going on these longer fasts. And I'm not saying everybody's got to do all these longer fasts in order to see healing. But you hear of these people going on long fasts, recovering their autoimmune issues. You've even heard, and again, if you're listening and you know someone with cancer or you have cancer, I'm not suggesting that you go and do all of these long fasts and your cancer is going to be cured. But you do hear of people who go on long fasts and their tumors just shrink. And in some circumstances, their cancer is just gone. And that is because of this recycling system that's going on in the body. So you just come out healthier and younger than basically younger than what you were prior to a longer fast. And so that's where you can see like how the skin elasticity would help, how the anti-aging helps, like maybe you're not as wrinkled as you were. Your tissue quality is better. And I know people who, when they're really sick too, they just fast for a couple of days and like knock it out. And there's people who, various viruses, they fast for a couple of days if they get sick, and they heal just that much faster. And, I've talked about cancer thriving on glucose before. Well, so do viruses. Like viruses have been shown to replicate so much faster when they have a lot of glucose available, because it just gives them fuel, right? A lot of these viruses and cancer cells can't thrive on ketone bodies. And that's really what your body's doing, fueling on when there's no fuel coming in. They have to burn the fat that's stored, and ketone bodies are a byproduct of fat metabolism, and that's what you use for fuel. So this extra recycling is just so amazing. I mean, it's just an amazing, amazing process. And like I said, sadly, so many people, and probably the vast majority, I mean, we probably don't know all that many people who intermittent fast and only eat a couple of times a day. I mean, most people are eating from the time they get up till the time they go to bed. They're eating high sugar processed foods. Like they're just not letting their body get into this process of deep autophagy. And like I said, there's varying levels of autophagy. And it's not like we're just turning it on and turning it off. There's deep, deep autophagy that happens like a 1, 2, 3 day fasts and beyond. Like there's really, really deep levels of autophagy going on there. And then there's lighter autophagy going on, where intermittent fasters who are fasting 18 hours every day. You're probably at the end of your fast, probably getting into some autophagy. And even if you let a couple of extra hours pass, that's even deeper autophagy. So it's just this cleaning up system. And you also upregulate white blood cells, because they are basically your cleanup crew. And then this is, again, how your immune system is just working that much more efficiently and that much better. So your body has to get really good at this scavenging system and cleaning things out. So if you do this process and you're a regular faster who does this, maybe you do one longer fast a month or even one a quarter, your body gets a lot more efficient at this, because it's like, oh, cool. Like I've done this before. I'm gonna, I'm revving up here. I'm in my autophagy process. Or if you're a low carb person and you don't have a lot of sugar to burn, and you're already kind of getting into that ketogenic phase or ketogenic state, I should say, you're going to rev up your autophagy that much faster. So autophagy can be life-saving, and it's very, very exciting. It can heal a lot. And like I said, it's just one of those things that I think we're just starting to scratch the surface to see what we really, really are dealing with here and what we're uncovering. And just another thing about cancer too, it's just honestly heartbreaking to me how not only are we not looking at cancer as a metabolic disease for the most part, there are more and more professionals, and it's very, what's on the horizon for cancer treatments is I think very, I'm excited about it. It's exciting. But how we're treating it now, like when I look at my mom and how I look at, when I went to appointments with her and her oncologist told her that cancer does not thrive on sugar and that that was a myth and that she should eat anything she wants at any time. And it doesn't matter if it's high sugar or high fat, just keep your weight on, even though she was about 60 pounds overweight. Just keep your weight on. And that's all they care about when you come into your visits. Get on the scale, get on the scale. Oh, you're losing too much weight. They don't look at body composition, which they should do that instead. And I know, it's just not a perfect system, but they were smart. They would focus in more on body composition, put people on ketogenic diets, and force their body into autophagy before their treatments. But anyway, that doesn't happen. We're told to keep our weight up. My mom was sent home with a big bag of Ensure, which is full of completely toxic ingredients, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, inflammatory seed oils, all kinds of nonsense that should not be in anybody's body, let alone cancer patients on chemotherapy that have compromised immune systems. It's just mind-boggling. So again, this process of autophagy is basically your body being in a catabolic state, right? It's breaking things down. It's looking for old amino acids that it can bring back into that amino acid pool and use. And if your body doesn't think that they're good enough to use, they're gonna pitch them, recycling into the bloodstream, into the detox centers. You're going to poop them out. You're going to sweat them out, whatever it is, probably poop them out. But you get rid of them and you're just so much stronger. But we need to be really careful about not overdoing this process as well. There's hardly anybody who is overdoing the fasting or doing, too many long fasts. Like, you don't run into that very often, but you do want to be very careful about the feasted state too. Like, we don't want to just be on autophagy all the time. That wouldn't be good. But when you do eat and you do feast, you've broken down and gotten rid of so much garbage in the body. You don't want to be eating garbage, because when you do eat, then your body's looking to rebuild things that it's broken down. You want to rebuild with the best building materials possible. You don't want junky stuff going into your body. So we want whole foods, we want meat, we want eggs, we want a lot of great proteins. We want whole, real food. We want, full fat dairy, full fat Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, non-starchy vegetables, a little bit of fruit here and there for fiber. We don't want to be putting garbage into our body because we don't want to rebuild our body with that yucky stuff. So again, HIIT fasting are some of the things that help you get into the autophagy process. How long does it take? Completely variable. Like I said, it's not an on-off switch. And then there are things too, like when you say you you're doing a 3-day fast and then you break your fast and you eat a meal and then you go back into a 2-day fast. Like my clients, my students don't do this very often. You're going to get back into autophagy pretty quickly, because you haven't been eating for days on end. So it really just depends, how clogged up are you? Do you have a lot of fat to burn through? Do you have a lot of glycogen to burn through? Do you have a lot of sugar in your bloodstream? How insulin resistant are you? Is the energy actually getting into the cells or is it hanging out in the bloodstream? And then, like I said, how much glycogen storage do you have? So if you're somebody who has been doing the standard American diet for years and years, very insulin resistant, and you went and did a 72-hour fast, you might just be getting into the deep autophagy at the time that you break your fast. Whereas someone who's very fat adapted, has been doing more of a low carb approach or a ketogenic approach, who is an intermittent faster most days, that, maybe you're eating 50 to 75 grams of carbs and you don't have your glycogen stores completely filled up, it might only be 24 hours where you're into that deep autophagy. So I know we hear a lot of, experts who will say, okay, at 17, you're at this state of autophagy, and 24 and 36. And those can be highly variable, just depending on how healthy you are, what you're eating, what your exercise level is. So bottom line is, like longer fasts here and there can be super beneficial. We just want to make sure when we do eat and get back into our feast or fed state that we're eating really healthy foods to do that. So I hope you learned more about the process of autophagy today. It's a fascinating topic. I think there's a lot to be uncovered about it, but can definitely help you in your healing journey and really be a really big tool in your toolbox. So hope you learned a lot. I'll see you back next week for another episode.